in this world. And I thought, that is unity if ever I heard it. I wonder if he goes to unity.
I have always heard he didn't believe in God at all, so I was surprised to hear you say that.
Well, he may be doing a script. I mean, he's got the voice.
You wouldn't do a script for something that you felt, or I wouldn't do a script for something that I felt strongly against.
On his own.
He may be searching.
Okay. Yeah, he wanted to. I thought it was interesting that I was talking about the Egyptians and, how they believed in many gods until this one Egyptian pharaoh came on the scene, and he decided God was only talking through him.
Right.
And so the Israelites possibly picked up that idea of the one God from him.
From the pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's correct.
King Tut's daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's all interrelated. All right. Sorry, I didn't start the recording till just now, so I apologize to those of you that are listening also, because we missed a few in there.
Oops.
Man is the latest and the highest manifestation of divine energy. The fullest and most complete expression or pressing out of God. To man, therefore, is given domain over all manifestations.
I know you're quoting, and I know that sometimes you don't have time, but I think it's okay to update the language.
Actually, my preference is to read the language from the way it was written, and for students to
Update it ourselves.
Well, to take it from the rawness that it was, and redefine it for the self.
And make it their own.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because in some people do update it, and I think that sometimes, just like in the Bible, when we update it, we may change the context of what the writer was talking about and miss a point. So I prefer that you get it from the language that Emily Cady was talking about, from her own.
It's her culture.
Yeah, I mean, that's the culture of the times. You have to take that into,
yes.
Yeah, but I don't want to be the one that would change the context for students in the future. Unless I see that there's something really not, science and religion are coming so close. And at some point right now, we know that our thinking creates our lives, and how that works in the brain. We know that that's the truth. And we know that because of science. And a lot of things that we teach in Unity are being scientifically stated now. And they have the research and the information to prove that this is correct. So that's my, I just don't want to change that context.
Because in Genesis, the word man has dominion over. The word dominion in Hebrew actually has a meaning of to take responsibility for.
That's correct.
Yes.
Which is very different from our from the microscope of the culture that we've come through with the word dominion. And so many people, like in the 1800s, were saying dominion means I'm better than everything else, and I rule everything.
Yeah, but in Emily Cady's instance, hers was to be responsible for. I'm pretty sure. We studied, and you will study if you go through all the Unity classes and you take, we just took it, Bible interpretation of Hebrew scriptures. That's one of the things that you're going to look at is the languaging as it was originally written versus the way we tend to think of it today and the difference there.
Because that does give it a little bit, if you change dominion for responsibility,
right,
that gives it a little bit different, in my head anyway.
Right, yeah.
Well, in seminary, we were given this phrase. I went to Presbyterian seminary, which is a more liberal, definitely. But the seats in Laban, the situation in life.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to look at the culture.
Right. You have to know your culture. So God is.
I've been studying a lot.
Yeah. God is man exista, from X out of, and sistering to stand forth. Man stands forth out of God. Man is a threefold being made up of spirit, soul, and body. So that's the Trinity in unity, spirit, soul, and body.
Okay, that's where that comes from.
As the creative underlying cause of all happenings, he is principal impersonal. Or we would say it today is personal and principal impersonal. As expressed in each individual, he becomes a personal to that one, a personal, loving, all-giving father, mother. And if you were going to update it, it would be it today and today.
I can't use it either.
We all have direct access through the Father in us, the central eye of our being, to the great whole of life, love, wisdom, power, which is God. And you got to remember in the 1800s when this was written, late 1800s, early 1900s, I mean, that directness with God was not readily accepted. There was always a go-between. Today, that's
well,
pretty
it's
common.
definitely an outer, even in like denominations like Quaker, you know, where you do have direct. I mean, a lot of Protestants throughout the saint stuff,
Right.
You know, because in Protestantism we have a direct line to God,
Right.
but it's still very much an
Outer God. Right. It's an outer God.
Yeah, outer,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, not an inner God. There is but one source of being. This source and you are connected every moment of your existence. You have power to draw on this source for all of the good you are or ever will be capable of desiring. The aim of any spiritual effort we make is greater consciousness. So no matter what we do as beings, and we're studying and doing everything that we're doing, our aim is really to be that spiritual consciousness and just to create a greater consciousness, whether we're aware of it or not. Sometimes we're unaware of that fact.
I had a spiritual director. He was a professor at the seminary. That was my spiritual director for a little while. And he actually said something about God coming and going. You know, and he was an Old Testament professor. You know, he didn't believe in the judgment stuff. You know, but I've never. He said that, and that was jarring to me. Because it's like, no, God's either, no, I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't quite get my head around that one. You know, I can't imagine God leaving us. And so I come here and I really find so much comfort. You know, I might say, go away
Right. Yeah.
when I get frustrated and don't want to do what God wants me to do or something, you know, but I'm the one that's shutting down.
Right.
You know, and
yeah, it's our,
closing myself up.
that's right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's God's always there.
Yeah.
He's never not there.
Right. So whether we're conscious of it or unconscious or we're pushing away, whatever, it's up to us to create that connection and to take the time to do it, because it takes practice. It takes time just to be. And that's what we're talking about here is the being of life. Just being still, being, that's what this whole chapter was really about, is just being alive in the moment.
There are times when I settle into my furniture, you know, in the evenings, I just feel like my furniture gives me hugs. And it's to think of God as everything, it's like, okay, God.
Just give yourself a hug.
Just settle down into my furniture. And, you know, God's my furniture too.
Yeah. So we're just going to take a moment here and we're going to do a little meditation. And what I want you to do is I want you can either say it aloud or you can say it to yourself. But we're going to start with saying it out loud. And then I just want you to use either one of these phrases, these affirmations, or all of it as a focus point. So just to go within, and we'll start by just reading the affirmations, and then you can choose to say all of them repetitively like a mantra, or just pick out one and say it either aloud or to yourself. And get comfortable. You don't have to sit next to each other. You can spread out, lay down, whatever you want to do. And we're just going to spend about 3 minutes just being in the silence with our own affirmative thoughts. So we're going to start with, I am one with God. I am the creator of God. I am an expression of God. I am spirit. I am one with God. I am the created of God. I am an expression of God. I am spirit. We'll do one more time together. I am one with God. I am the creator of God. I am an expression of God. I am spirit. And so just take a breath and begin to relax. And just choose your mantra. And open your heart to the spirit. And now just take a deep breath in. And just relax back into this moment. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was that experience? Have you done a little short meditation like that before, where you're focusing on the mantra? And, Did you have time to just relax?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take a break here only because I want to check in on my phone and it's in the other room. I want to see where Carla and Jenny might be at.
Okay.
Because I know they had problems last week.
Yeah.
So, and I sent them the link, but I just want to make sure that we're good.
Check for the books. Yeah.
Thank you. Now remind me to turn it back on. All right. So we just did a meditation, Shelley, and now we are going to move on. So our discussion is, what is the distinction between God is a spirit and God is spirit?
Showing.
Can barely hear you all. Are we using the mic? Yeah? Can you hear me now? Barely. Let me see if I can turn the volume up. Is that better? No. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but it's on microphone and it's coming across and it says it has a good sound check. So I'm not, now I just dropped out, but. Okay.
Will you be recording later?
Yeah, I'm recording it now. I think she was on her phone and was having problems hearing it. It's harder when you're on the phone. Okay, so what is the distinction between God is a spirit and God is spirit?
I think she talked about that in there, and she was saying that God is spirit, is creative energy, our force of everything. But when you say God is a spirit, it sounds like you're talking about a ghost or something as separate.
Uh-huh.
Right, you're getting back to that outside God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the distinction. The outer from the inner.
Right.
The creative force of everything. The being of all, which is God is spirit, is that just allness of God, the everything created.
Right.
And then when you're just say, put the A in there, then God is a spirit, then it's putting that limitations around God.
Yeah.
It's limiting.
When we did that meditation, I chose I am one with God.
Mm-hmm.
I am the creator of God. I've always accepted. I am an expression of God. I've always accepted. But when I got to I am spirit, I had to stop because spirit is the everything.
Uh-huh.
And that's hard for me as I am spirit. Wow, but I can go along with I am one with God.
Okay.
I am God. But for some reason to say I am spirit kind of took me back a minute. Because the spirit is all of the universe.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I sort of had that with the I am the creator of God, but kind of for the opposite reason, because it felt like it made a God outside of me or separated me.
Mm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay.
And even a little bit with the I am an expression of God, but that was like, I could deal with that one. But the uncreated, it felt like there was some space, expansion, and contraction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. Very good awareness of our feelings about it and our emotions around it. And it takes time
Right.
to be comfortable with being spirit. and being within God as God and create with God.
Yeah, I can use the analogy, the water analogy, but I'm still not there here with, and for those who can't see, I'm pointing to my heart. Because there's no way I can be God in my framework.
Right.
Especially my previous framework.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I can't control the planets and form life on the planets and all that stuff.
Or can you?
Or can you? So
Okay.
there.
Okay. I knew that was coming as I was saying it.
Because you formed from the dust of the earth and from the dust of the stars.
Right.
That's what we formed from.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it possible? Yes, it is possible.
Yeah. And my faith tends to be experiential.
Uh-huh.
And I've always somewhat envied people who could just believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a meditation one time where, and I have trouble getting to that point again, but I've had it happen a few times where you just become part of the chair or floor or whatever. Right. And I love that depth of meditation. But one time, and this has only happened once, I felt the connection to all.
Right.
And I knew without any question, and I still do, I mean, it's never left me because it was such a powerful experience, that kind of connectedness to all. And so when science is starting to say we're all part of the Big Bang, and I got so excited when my brother said that we're all created of the same stardust, and it's like, yes, he's getting it,
and so you've experienced it once. So
but
now
it's so strong, it's there forever.
But there's still a belief in the mind. So it's connecting the mind with the heart, the emotions of it, that sometimes keeps us from being able to go back to that space. And it's because there's a fear there. And that's typically what happens, is we block ourselves because it's like so overwhelming when we do connect in that space and know that we're one with all, and you actually we doubt ourselves to whether that was real or not. And then also it can create a big fear about being responsible maybe in this form.
Okay.
Connected to the whole.
I remembered it. I mean, it was such a beautiful experience.
Very beautiful experience. Overwhelming and frightening.
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't. The overwhelm in some degree, but it was like, this was just so fabulous, and I don't have any fear of death because of it. The dying, yes.
Dying, but
that
not
hurts,
death.
but not death.
Okay.
And I mean, Thomas Merton had a similar experience. I mean, and Harry Pickens, one talk I went to, he shared something very similar to Merton's experience. That was all with people, whereas mine was just
open with the
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
the planets, the chairs, everything is
right. We create all of it in our minds. Is there anything in today's discussion that challenges or changes your current notion of God, or in your readings? So are you able to see yourself yet as spirit?
I can see myself as spirit, but I always think of God as like we're children of God. And actually that, I just always picture it that way, that it's just out of respect of like that, like your parent, because I can envision, as you begin to grow up and you do things, it's like, I learned that from my mother and my father, and I watched people that I admire do that. Is that kind of in the
Yeah.
realm there?
Yeah, that's right.
And then God comes to you in another form and blows you away.
And she uses the father image a lot in here, you know.
Yeah, she does.
Emily does use father figure a lot.
It's like a good parent would wrap you, you know, comfort you, keep you secure, that sort of notion of God, even though we're all part of it somehow, and expressions of it, you know.
Well, God can be...
We only have words to express also. We're limited.
And that kind of huge field, there aren't really words for.
Yeah.
So that's where your creativity comes into it. So there aren't always words for it. And that's where either through journaling or art, some other medium that you choose. And that's where a lot of our great artists get their inspiration and how it becomes on canvases. I know last Thursday, I do Resilient Families. For those of you who don't know, on Thursdays I work with the Resilient Families Project with homeless families at Wayside. And in their chapel, they every month they have a new artist display. And they had an art therapist that created paintings from the soul. I don't know how else to describe it, because they were actually very breathtaking experiences of the soul meeting with God, the goddess, the God in all of us, and the universal expressions that she had. Just absolutely stunning. So if you have a chance to go to Wayside, you know, Hotel Louisville, which is at 2nd and Broadway.
They're still down there?
They're still down there.
Oh.
And they are breathtaking.
Wow.
So, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful exhibit. But that's being the expression of God. So how that comes from within us and wells outward. So it is in the outer that we express. And that may seem separate, but the inspiration is from God.
I guess the biggest shakeup God's ever given me, there was still a sense of outer God. And I was at U of L working on my master's, and I was actually, it was one night, I was actually studying, and I wasn't thinking God. I was trying to get my work done. And I felt this presence coming up behind me, and it felt masculine, just very gently, like a lover, putting his hand supportively on my shoulders. And realizing it was God freaked me out because I'd worked with Father God, and I had to make myself come to terms and make myself relate with Mother God, because my own mom and my relationship wasn't the best. And that's how we tend to relate to God sometimes too. Right. So I thought, God isn't my mom, the thinking then. And so I said, if I'm going to get to know God, I need to really dive in and get to know all facets of God. So I worked hard in building a relationship with Mother God. This was not Mother God. This was Lover God. And it freaked me out because it felt somewhat incestuous because of the parent vision.
Right.
And fortunately at that time I did have a spiritual director, and I ran to him. I was like, this is the weirdest experience I've ever had in my life, and it feels creepy. Beautiful, which feels even like, you know, getting guilt in my head or something. You know, it's like, oh, and just this is another facet of God, that God is so in love with us. So it took some work.
Yeah, because we do look at it as that parent, father, mother, God. And what it actually is, in my experience, is the masculine part of us, the feminine part of us, which is all of us as God. So we give it words and limit it to our physical perception of a parent when God's not our parent.
Yeah.
God's not anything. God is.
Well, what that led to was a really working out of intimacy with God.
Right.
You know, that it's not necessarily sexual, but that it's also appreciation of the sexual.
Right.
And to think of God in those terms was a real challenge for me.
And that's where we're going now. We're thinking.
I try not to give it that parent
Words. Yeah.
because I mean I do sometimes just because of the history of
Yes,
my
it just in your
you know
consciousness.
the way I was raised and stuff. But I really try to get away from that because it also to me implies someone outside.
Yeah. And see, for me, I'm used to the Father, Mother, God, but I'm used to it being the expression of the feminine, masculine.
I
God
could go
is
with
one.
Father, Mother,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah. Our
But
mother,
I try to
father.
steer clear of all that.
Yeah. So
In
for
my
for a
own-
long time, when I first came back as an adult into Unity, I would only use like sweet spirit or spirit.
Yeah.
I never used the terms
Those are
Mother,
the kind
Father,
of terms
God.
I use when I'm on my own outside of.
Yeah.
Because aren't we, I mean, there's the anima, animus in each of us.
That's
so
right.
There's a male and female within all of us.
Right.
And God is the,
Yeah.
you know, part of that.
Yeah. So the thinking, here we go into that thinking phase. There is but one mind in the entire universe. This mind is God. Some will agree with this ideal, while others will not understand how they can think wrong thoughts and have any but God thoughts.
So that's what I was talking about earlier.
Yep.
Where do the other thoughts come from?
Where do they come from? They come from God.
Yeah.
There is, in reality, only one mind or spirit, which is life, intelligence, and so forth in the universe. And yet there's a sense in which we are individual or separate, a sense in which we are free wills and not puppets. Spirit is the central unchanging I of all of us. So spirit is unchanging. And that is in us, as us. In our outspringing from God into the material world, spirit is inner, one with God. Soul or mortal mind or intellect is the clothing, as it were, of the spirit body and the external clothing of the soul. Mortal mind, the intellect, which gathers its information from the outside world through the five senses, it has no way of knowing truth from falsehood. So herein lies the question, the answer to your question. It is what Paul calls the mind on the flesh. So our mortal mind is that intellect which gathers information through our senses, and that we now know there are more than five. There are seven that we know of currently. And it has no way of knowing truth from falsehood, is what Paul calls to the mind
Of the flesh.
of the flesh.
Of the flesh, right?
It could be. I could have typed it wrong.
Yeah, put it in there.
Oh, I'm in the wrong
It
book.
did-
It's 29. It's 28 to 29 on your page.
Mine, oh, mine is,
not,
yeah.
not on mine. I have the old one.
Yeah, I do too, so it's not in my book.
Hold on.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the scripture, I think.
It says on the flesh in here, but that doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I just heard it. Scripture, you know.
Yeah, I don't have my Bible with me. So the spirit within you is divine mind, the real mind. Without it, the human would disappear. Just as a shadow disappears when the real thing that cast it is removed. Man then is spiritual mind, mortal mind, and body.
Paradox. Because if God is everything, God is also that mortal mind too. But the mortal mind has free will, so it can do what it wants. So that puts it separate from God, but yet it's not separate from God.
Because it's within God.
Yes.
That's correct.
Paradox.
Yep.
I read some of this stuff and I just go, paradox.
Yeah.
Why do I think of shoes?
Because when we come to that realization that, spirit is within you, is divine mind, and if we just, that real mind, and if we let go of that, then it all just disappears. That one's hard.
It is. It is.
That one's hard.
I mean,
Yep, it is. What makes it the hardest for you?
just thinking of everything as God, we are God. God, and as God, there's this separation of choice to choose something that isn't perfect or that isn't
Perfect.
that's error,
Yeah.
based. And how is that possible? We'd have to say God has chosen an error, in a sense, and that's not possible. So what is it there's some separation there somehow.
Yeah, there is.
How is that possible?
It's separation of love, if there is a separation. Because we were created to be able to think for ourselves and to make up our mind as to whether or not to be part of God. That do we want to be with God?
Who's the we?
Well, I was going to say, is that true?
Okay, I see. Well, what popped in my head was the movie with Nicolas Cage, City of Angels.
Yeah.
And he describes angels closest to God, in the layers of heaven or whatever.
Yeah. And we are all that.
Yes. I'm just talking about the movie.
Yeah.
That they have no free will.
Mm-hmm.
And they are in God's presence. Why would they want it? I mean, and I kind of understood that too, because I had a meditation where I was in God's presence. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I didn't, if I had died right then, I really wouldn't have cared one bit, because it was, mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking no word descriptions here that I can give you at all. And if you're in that kind of proximity to God, according to Nicolas Cage's angel, there was no free will for those angels. I mean, why would they want it? Mm-hmm. They are in absolute fullness of everything. So, there might be some separation-ish. Mm-hmm. I'm processing here. Okay?
I know. So I understand that. So think of it like this. Think of it as a learning and growth experience.
Right.
And as we learn and grow through our own evolution and the evolution of humankind, we tend to become closer to God, the Creator, whatever you want to call the energy force of life. And I don't know that we have all the answers in this human form at this point in time. Obviously, I don't think we do. I think Jesus had a pretty good idea of the role humanity can play in a peaceful, loving existence. And in our own minds, we create conflict around our own beingness in the world. And until we let go of preconceived ideas, we're not thinking. And the only way that I know we can do that is to do it as Jesus did and take time in that space of nothingness, which we call prayer and meditation.
As was his custom.
In that nothingness, the answers lie in the void. Because where do we come from? The void.
Why did karma pop in my head?
That's a man-made concept.
I know.
All of it is. All of it is.
It's as if God just wanted to have fun.
Let's put these people down and see what they can do.
Video game,
Yeah.
That's funny.
If I set up these rules this way, then, and I'm going to jump in here for a little while.
That's why I like
Yeah.
the city game, because I got the little cars going around.
All right. For all those who, without question or discussion, are willing at once to accept and try a few plain, simple rules by which they can find the Christ or divine within themselves, that through it, each man for himself may work out his or her own salvation from all his or her troubles. So, in today's terms, if you go into the void, into the silence, the answers lie there. And you can work it all out for yourself as to who and what and why you're here. And it's different for all of us because we're all different aspects of God. Working as one unit whole.
The perfection lies there, or in the perfection lies everything, the healing, no matter what we seek, if we can just get ourselves into that.
Right.
And you as a human choose how far away you are from that perfection.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't impossible.
No.
Yes, God.
Unlikely perhaps, but not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think having somebody like Jesus to model, that gives us that we can be Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We can accept Christ within. And I know I have to be careful where I say that now, but to have that Christ, Jesus said, you can do this and more.
Right.
And people keep forgetting that verse.
And the Christ is Buddha also.
And I was going to say,
there's a lot of models.
so there's a lot of models.
Yeah.
So Buddha also is a model
Yes.
of the Christ consciousness
Mm-hmm.
in human form.
And how close you can get to that perfection.
Yeah.
Really, if that's your choice.
Yeah, if that's what you
Mhm.
choose. And it's being aware of our own limitations, our own thinking. So when we become aware of where we are on the spectrum to where we want to be and what we want to create and how we want to live, that's when we begin to change and push the box limits out a little farther and get closer to the void or the God or whatever spirit you see it as. And that's a choice that we make. And we make that choice on a daily basis. And sometimes we can get there in 1 second. And in the next second, we're right back down in our human stuff. So that's just part of it until we continually practice. And I look at it as long as I'm probably walking on this earth as this being right here, I got practice and work to do.
For years I've been saying, I'm going to get it right this time because I don't want to come back and do this again.
I don't know that we have a choice in that. Seek light from the spirit of truth within you. The very spirit of truth is at your call within you. And I say that because we're always reborn as God. There's no separation.
Right.
The soul always exists.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I totally believe that.
So seek light from the spirit of truth within you.
That enough and I'll end up on Mars or something.
The very spirit of truth is at your call within you.
I don't have any problem with that.
You know,
I'm not always good at it.
right.
But I don't have any problem believing.
Right.
When
Go ahead.
when we talk about the different, like Buddha and
Mhm.
Christ, is there like does that like include every religion across the board? So
I think it does. I think that in all religions, like Allah, Muhammad, I think that they were all prophets in their own time, in their own space, in that own society, that culture. And it's a cultural, religion to me is always a cultural belief system in our humanity. And from that, all of that is God. So none of it is separate. So that thinking process that is in one religion is in all religions because it's in humanity's consciousness. And so in each culture, there has been created, whether it's the same person and it's been told stories through folk tales and oral traditions. So if it was the same person, if Buddha and Jesus were the same person, or Muhammad and Jesus and Buddha were all the same person, but because in the different the different cultures, they became different religions. That's a possibility. I mean, I don't know. I didn't live back then, but but that conscious thinking of that one person or being that almost made it to perfection. That's possible for all of us. So in each culture there is a being. And in India, in the Hindu culture, there's many beings. Okay, so they still believe in the different deities at different degrees.
It's like the Catholics used to have, all the different saints.
Right.
Well, still
Yeah.
does.
They still do.
Yeah.
So it's no different from that.
But with the one essence of God.
Right.
But Mother Spirit, I'm looking up there. What was her name in India? Mother Teresa.
Mother
Yeah.
Teresa.
She, is an example of the Christ within.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Many people, spiritual gurus,
Right. No, Gandhi was.
from Gandhi. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I've always had worries about is when I was a child, my neighbors were Jewish, and I just loved them. And I worked for a Jewish doctor while I was in college, and I could see that Christ light in them, and it just always puzzled me. But I'll say that's the feeling I got here. It was peaceful. It's like, we're all going. You can relax, hell.
Right.
Because I do worry about people that I think they're going to be left in the corner.
No.
And
Nobody is.
I just always like to make sure I'm not on the wrong path or whatever with my understanding. I haven't found it like in words, but it feels that way.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of beliefs in society, in the race consciousness, that there is a separation, that some of us are not going to make it in the day of redemption. But in the end, each of us, as the soul that we are, is already redeemed. There's nothing in us that is unlovable. And we're all of the same source. So it's just our cultural beliefs that are different. And to me, religion is really a cultural belief in our societies. It's a a philosophical, maybe psychological, way of looking at the unknown. I mean, you gotta, how did we end up here? I mean, there's pretty good ideas that we know because of science, that because of just the way the bacteria, when the earth was in incubation, for lack of better terms, but if you look at it like the birth of a human, and when we were surrounded in the womb by all the water, well, the same thing happened with the earth when it was created from the explosion. The crust was fiery, and as it cooled down with the vapors that came up and the waters that came up, then the bacteria was able to create life, and from that life we evolved. And so there's no difference in any of us because we all evolved from that same bacteria.
Right. Are you familiar with Matthew Fox?
Yes.
Okay, he wrote that original blessing instead of original sin. We got the whole idea of original sin from St. Augustine, and
Right.
That whole warped idea.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and if you can think of, if everybody's with God, if you can think of Hitler with God, your fear for everybody else will disappear if you know in your heart that even Hitler is with God.
Well, Hitler is God.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
And that's very hard.
If you can get there, you've got it.
Oh, man.
I mean, Hitler is an expression. It wasn't the perfect expression. He was not the perfect expression of God by any means.
No, that's what not to do.
Oh.
But Hitler was an example of the error thinking running rapid in our brains, and how through our own conceptions that we create within our own mind, we can manifest anything outward in the world. And just, it can be outward that's not good in our definition of good.
A Presbyterian minister, friend of mine, when we were in seminary together, had this very vivid dream. I don't remember all of it, but it was with everybody in heaven. And when she named Hitler, that did it for us. Like, what? And so I've worked on that ever since, and that's been 30 plus years ago. So, I knew he would be in hell. But
heaven
I don't believe in a physical hell. I never have, really.
I never have.
And so heaven's not outside of you.
No.
So Hitler's not somewhere else. What happens when we die, to my knowledge, is that we go back into the earth that we came out of, and that the spirit is absorbed back into spirit. Okay. So there's no separation. It's only in our creative thinking that we're separate. So heaven is within us. We are heaven. I know that's hard.
Yeah, well, in the absolute presence, the conscious presence of God,
yes,
that's heaven.
Yeah.
And that's what she saw, and all these people were there, including Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 30-something.
Right.
So what did I know at 30-something?
We did a class here. It was Jack Poole.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of the name of the book. But
Disappearing from the universe.
It could have been. Well, we're talking about a scale of consciousness.
Disappearing from the
And
universe.
if Hitler were at 2, and Jesus were at 1,000, where would we be?
Mm-hmm.
And we decided 500, so we became the 500 Club. And,
I remember that class.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
But
and so it is a degree of consciousness in our error thinking. That's where we're working from that lower degree of consciousness, more that animalistic, that we evolved from that animalistic consciousness, which we call in Unity the atom consciousness. And what it really is it's when we moved from the primate into the Homo sapien consciousness, and that flight and fear and flight, the reptilian brain in the back into the frontal lobe of the brain. So as we develop, our brains develop, and our conscious thinking develops and rises. So Hitler is, you know, like a 2. He's on the lower animalistic consciousness of God. And then Jesus would be at the top, or Buddha would be at the top. And the rest of us, you know, are, and the way I look at it, when I had to do a demonstration at Unity at one point, and for those of you that are on the, I'm drawing a ladder. And so as we move up in consciousness, so this is the human self at the bottom, our human consciousness, just where we're at on a daily basis. And then we can move up, and we can move up as we meditate. And this would be, and the Christ is somewhere in here. So when we connect with Christ, we come that much closer. And then in a second, we can be right back down here. So we're constantly moving up and down this ladder of life and our conscious thinking. And it can happen in an instant. You know, we can be totally in that Christ self presence, and then something happened in the human world, in our frame of life.
Your
and
insurance denies.
you're
go fight
ticked
with your
off, and there you go. Yeah. So then you became that, you come back down to that animalistic consciousness, or the atom consciousness that we talk about in Unity. So it does not make a great difference in our daily lives what we think about God, about ourselves, about our neighbors. Heretofore, nearly all our information has been gotten through our 5 senses. We have thought wrong because we have been misinformed by these senses, and our troubles and sorrows are the results of our wrong thinking. And what we now know, we have what we call heart math, which is actually one of another sense that we have.
Okay, so it's intuition and heart math.
Yeah, it's our intuition and that heart pulse, which, if you know the connection, if you've seen the body, and the heart in my mind frame is probably the greatest organ. You know, we always thought the mind was the controlling factor in the humankind, and it's actually the heart.
What was it Harry said someday?
He was talking about heart math.
Yeah.
That this field is, let's say, 1,000 times greater than this
Than the mind. And I mean, science
Who
is
said that?
Harry in his workshop.
Harry.
Yeah.
Harry. Okay.
So yeah, if you haven't ever experienced heart math, I suggest that you look into it. I don't have them with me, and I'll try, and I won't be here the last day of class when I come back. I'll show you what we mean, because in our energy force, when you're doing emotional processing, you can take dowsing rods, and if you're thinking negative thoughts, they will cross to a no, and if you're thinking positive thoughts, they will open wide, because your magnetic field, your heart space, is 100 times bigger than your mind space. And that's really what it shows. I use it to show people how, when you're thinking negatively, it impacts the way other people are affected around you, because your energy is into their energy force. And then when you're happy, how everybody else is happy that comes in contact with you, because they can feel your energy force. So it's pretty interesting. We are in the process of growth. So what I said earlier, into the highest spiritual manhood or womanhood, he, or God, is always trying to make us grander, larger, fuller, freer individuals. And I don't think that God makes us do anything. I think that my interpretation of this would be God, as expressions of God, we are always striving to be grander, larger, fuller, freer individuals.
And God is always providing us with the opportunities to do this.
That's correct.
That's how I see that.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
God is.
So God is presenting this to us,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do what we want with it.
Right.
So.
Okay. So we're going to have a little discussion. What are some of the things that are keeping you in bondage? What's your thinking? What's keeping you in bondage?
Addictions.
Addictions. That's
plural.
Mhm.
And I've been working with Carolyn Meese's sacred contracts with archetypes. And one of my archetypes is the addict.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine, because I did the wheel and it landed in the house that represents spirituality, which I really resented having the addict in a place that I really love to spend my time.
But it's everywhere.
I know. Well, they all overlap too. So I'm trying, like everything else, archetypes are neutral, but there's some that I think of negative. So that's where my work needs to happen. And I was sharing this with this friend, and she said the positive of having the addict in that particular house is that you're addicted to unity and the teachings there, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that I'm learning stuff. I am incorporating this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm processing, and I'm really living this now.
Mm-hmm.
It's permeating my breathing, and that's a good thing. So it's the same stuff. So maybe it'll get me out of bondage, even though I feel like it's, I watched.
Okay, so I'm gonna. And I'm going to say this because I want everybody who's listening online and everything. In Unity, we do not teach channeling, angels, or any other expression coming in between us and God. As spiritual individuals, it is our personal responsibility to go directly to the source and not to the mediums in between. That is a Unity teaching from Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Some Unity churches don't allow Course in Miracles and other New Age thought processes into the churches. And I'm just really being honest here, because as an individual, in order to grow and be who we came here to be as the expression of God, the only mind that can get you there is the mind of God. Following another person's guru, whatever, their book, their learnings, all the great writers that are out there, is no different than reading the Bible and interpreting it as channeled. Because we know that everything is written through a lens. Everything is through the lens of the perspective of the person who is writing it. And so therefore, it is not the truth. It is not your truth. Your truth comes from God. Period. God is, and it only comes to you through God. Now, you may get there through readings like Emily Cady, Charles Fillmore. And really why I'm saying this is because I want you to understand that all the books, all the guru, even Unity, as your friend said, can be a trap. It can limit you. The source is within. That's the way. And that was the teaching from Jesus and from Buddha. That's the freedom. It's the freedom from the bondage of everything.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's really good.
But that was Charles's. And he was very animate about that, because he will be the first one to tell you, I have the right to change my mind.
I liked what Harry said Sunday about the same thing. And he said sometimes it's really good to take a sabbatical from books.
From everything.
And
which is why Vipassana is a wonderful experience. And if you've never Vipassana. So you go into a silent retreat, totally in conditions where you get up in the morning and you eat a light breakfast. You stay in meditation all day in quiet, and everything's done in silence. Then you eat your lunch and you do it mindfully, and then you go back into meditation, and then you eat your dinner and you go back into meditation, and then you go to bed, and you get up every day for 7 days and you do this process. It's enlightening. It will change your life. It will change your mind. And it's hard the first day, but once you're there and you're immersed in it, it's easy.
I had a friend that took, like, she gave up book reading for Lent one year. And she said the first 2 or 3 weeks she was fine, you know, because she would journal because that's how you process, because she had so much stuff to process. But she didn't go back over and look at her notes, you know, but she didn't read anything. And then after that, it's like, it was getting really, really hard. And she quit like after 5 weeks, and 4 or 5 weeks. She couldn't make it to the end of Lent.
So in Lent and Unity, all we give up is our air thinking. You don't have to give up anything else except for be willing to let go of your air thinking. And to do that, you have to be in daily contact with the source to keep you in that place of spirit.
I'm not going to let Unity become another bondage.
What are the benefits you receive from you are receiving from the retention of these things that you're keeping you in bondage? And I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. Anybody have anything to add to it?
I just wonder how many people who come to Unity really understand that, because a lot of folks, you know, are into channeling or into past life regressions or whatever it might be. And it's all good. You know, it's a way to spirit, but just what you said, you know, it's between me and spirit, really.
Yeah, it's really hard. And there are some Unity, this is a big thing in Unity movement right now for those of you that are becoming licensed Unity teachers. I mean, we have this discussion going on every day about what really is Unity.
Yeah.
And because in a lot of churches there are a little, you know, the new Onasis and the New Age and a lot of, you know, stuff going on. Here we do have the Sunday morning course classes, which I think Jerry does a really good, he's very grounded in Unity, so he's really good at putting in a perspective of Unity. But we really are consciously aware of what we do offer at Unity. And even to the point where in our healing ministries, now I do Reiki. Reiki in itself is a form of channeling energy. Okay. So it is part of our Energy Works on Sunday, but in Unity we believe in the prayer of affirmations and denials, which we're going to get into next. And so, and how does that energy works move in with it? And in some churches, they would never have Course in Miracles. There would never be oneness. There would never be Reiki. There would be any of that taught from the, and we have that in Unity. There are both spectrums. So you could go into some churches and it's very traditional Fillmorian. And I consider myself to be a Fillmorian.
Even he was out there at one point, but came back.
But he came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. He came back to the principles of his truth.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, they were not starting a religion. They only started the school because people were bombarding them, coming to them with requests for healings and presence. And he's like, well, you know, he and Myrtle were like, well, we can tell you how we did it. That's all we know. And they did it by going in silence. Charles Fillmore spent 5 hours a day in silence, Myrtle spent hours every day for over 2 years and healed herself of tuberculosis. But she did it through the silence and through prayer and affirming every cell in her body was whole and healthy and functioning in the perfection that it was created by God. And that's how they had their miracles. It wasn't through anything else. And that was one of Charles's, my understanding, that was one of his biggest concerns, was how it was going to be portrayed once it was out there, And that's why it comes from within. Everything comes down to the source. All right. I'm actually going to give you guys the key terms worksheet for this, but I'm going to do it as a handout for homework, okay? Because I want to get through denials and affirmations in 15 minutes or less. Okay, so we'll keep the comments to a minimum for a minute. All systems of spiritualizing the mind include denial. Every religion in all ages had some sort of denial of one of its foundations. Wrong or false beliefs held by us are really the cause of all sorts of our troubles. Wrong or error beliefs arise only in the human mind. We can, by a persistent effort of our will, change our beliefs. One of the methods that will work every time in getting rid of troublesome conditions, which are the result of erroneous thinking and feeling, and you notice it's not just our thinking, it's our feeling, is to deny them in toto. First, to deny that any such things have or could have power to make us unhappy. And second, to deny that these things do in reality exist at all. I think that's supposed to be do not in reality exist at all.
Second, deny that these things
Do in reality exist at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're denying that they exist,
Right.
that they have any power over you. Okay? So they don't have any power over us to make us happy, unhappy, or anything else. They just do not have power. And then they don't really exist. It's all a creation in our own mind. It's like we get anxious because we said something to somebody and 20 years ago, and it keeps coming back up in our thought process, and then you go back to make amends after 20 years, and the person looks at you and says, what are you talking about?
Oh, yeah.
You've been carrying that with you for all that, and I don't even know what you're talking about. Let it go already. Because it's not important in the scheme of their life. It's only important in your mind because you created the importance. Right. Denial is the first practical step toward wiping out of our minds the mistaken beliefs of a lifetime. By denying, we mean declaring not to be a true thing that seems true. Negative appearances are directly opposed to the teachings of truth. Jesus said, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Negative appearances are directly opposed to the teachings of truth. In reality, they do not exist. They only exist in our mind, in our intellect. And then, so once we deny, everybody cool with denials? They understand that? How many of you use denials?
I'm working on it because I guess the one I'm having trouble with is, my knees literally are bone on bone. There's so I can't deny the fact that there's no cartilage in there. Or, well, what cartilage is there hasn't regrown to a sufficient comfort zone.
Right.
So, because I am working on them. I don't want surgery.
Right.
So I want the cartilage to regrow.
Mm-hmm.
So it does hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I kind of deny the pain because I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. And I know a few years ago, this would have been everything.
Right.
And it's not.
Right.
My life is so full and so rich.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm there, but I haven't denied that they do hurt.
Yeah, right.
It does.
So pain is real in the physical body.
Okay.
Okay? So it's not to deny that the pain is there. That's not the truth.
The reality is that it's bone on bone.
The reality,
That-
that's what's not true. The bone on bone. It may be true in this moment, but it is not irreversible.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, so in your thought process at this time, it is the truth, but it's not real, because our bodies are miraculous. They regenerate new cells every second, every nanosecond. You know, they regenerate the nuclei, which regenerates itself consistently. It's in our thinking that we think that the body is dying. That's not the truth. Our thinking keeps the body dying. Once we realize that our body is always regenerating itself, we can grow a new limb. But in our limitedness, in our intellect, we don't see that yet. But you got to remember, we came from bacteria that has evolved.
And even less than that, we came from the stardust.
Right. And so,
Which is dust.
yeah. And so it's always evolving. So the body can evolve to heal itself. It can evolve to miraculous. I mean, Myrtle healed herself to tuberculosis, and in that stage of humanity consciousness, you were dead.
Yeah.
And so
you went off to a sanatorium.
Yeah, and you died.
Days, yeah.
So you get to choose to the extent that the pain is going to affect your body. I mean, sometimes I have a pain in my back, and they tell me that I have this and I have that, and I just look up and say, okay, whatever. You know, y'all do your medicine, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to just keep on moving. And that's what I did. Now, sometimes if I stop and I'm not doing anything, oh, daggone pain's back again. When is it ever going to go away? It's going to go away when I realize that whatever it is that's causing that is not true. And it's not going to go away until
And went back in the beginning when I first started coming to Unity. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Somebody in some class told me that I am a child of God and I did not inherit disease.
That's right.
I did not inherit pain. And I have used that.
Yeah.
And seen my own pain disappear, at least for that day, you know, not permanently.
Right. Yeah, right. But in that moment, you can make it disappear.
But in that moment, like when I'm at work and I can't bend anymore,
yeah.
And I have said nothing in my mind, but I am a child of God and I did not inherit pain.
Yeah.
And it will go away.
Yeah. And that's the truth. So that's an affirmation. And what Myrtle said is, as I'm a child of God, I do not inherit any sickness in my life. I am a whole being of the Christ, of God. And so you deny the power that the pain has over you, and you affirm that you're willing to see that whatever the condition is, healed. And you have to know what that condition is. So if you need to rebuild then that's what you affirm, that my knee cartilage is rebuilding itself molecule by molecule. And you have to take other steps too. There are other steps in the physical body that I had in my own realm of craziness in life. I had to they said I had some vascular neurological condition. Nobody knows what it is because it doesn't really exist. And that's my thinking.
Aren't you lucky?
Yeah, because they're like, we don't know what this really is. But I have, from time to time, have veins implode in my body. And at one time, it was very painful. It was a main vein, and I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks while they were trying to figure it out. And so, you know, did that experience, that was painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went through like 6 months of all this doctor crap and doctor crap and doctor crap. And finally I looked at my husband one day. I said, I am off this cycle. This is crazy. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going back to Unity. And this is when I came back to Unity. Because I'm going back to what I was taught as a child. I'm going to deny that this condition has any control over my life. because it did. The condition had control of my whole entire life. I felt like I was on a non-ending merry-go-round. And once I made that statement and started taking control back of my personal life, doing my yoga, doing my daily meditations, moving my body, getting back physically fit, doing the things that I needed to do, losing weight, stop smoking, don't eat crap that I'm not supposed to eat, like wheat and things like that, and recognize that I'm the one that's doing this to me. No outer conditions were being created. I was creating everything within me by my own actions, my own thoughts and being. When I stopped that, then voila, now occasionally I have a tinge in the back. Oh, yeah, I can handle
it. And now
it.
you're a preacher person.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
Uh-huh.
So I came back and just decided, okay, let's just be immersed in this and go for it. So, and it's possible. It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy to change, but it can be done. So, affirmation, to assert positively that it is so, even in the face of all contrary evidence. And that's what I had to do. I had to affirm that I was whole and healthy, no matter what. No matter what I saw in the outer expression of me, I was whole and healthy. I am a whole and healthy child of God. That was my affirmation.
I don't need surgery.
That was my whole affirmation. We speak the word, we confidently affirm, but we have nothing to do with the establishing of the word or bringing it to pass. If we agree or affirm unwaveringly, steadfastly, we hold God by his own unalterable laws to do the establishing or fulfilling. So it's up to us to know the truth and to live the truth. That is a principle of unity. That's our fifth principle. You have to live the truth. And we only do that by living our right thinking, not our error thinking.
Are you familiar with unity principles? Yes. Okay.
You do not change God's attitude toward you one iota by either importing or affirming. You only change your attitude toward God. By thus affirming, you put yourself in harmony with divine law, which is always working toward your good and never toward your harm or punishment. So divine law is what creates us.
And it's so comforting, to know that God's love is constant.
Yep. All right. I'm going to read this one and then we're probably going to have to end. Denials have an evasive or dissolving tendency. Affirmations build up and give strength and courage and power. So denials erases, well, and it allows us to let go of our attachment to it. So once we deny that it has any power, then we're able to let go of the attachment that we have to that crutch. Because typically, whatever it is that we're dealing with, the challenge, whatever it is, the health issue, we're using it some way in our mind, typically as a crutch of some type. We're being a victim. If we're being a victim of our childhood, we're being a victim of whatever the circumstances are. I realized that mine came from, and this is my thinking process, whether it's true or not, from sitting in a classroom at Unity and I had a cold and the teacher said, we were talking about healing and that, if I had a cold, if something was wrong with us and we had an illness, then it was our thinking that was creating that illness. And I sat for 22 years trying to figure out how the heck I created the common cold. And that's the truth of it. Until I created all the rest of this illness stuff that nobody even knows exists, in my body. And then once I just said, oh, I didn't create the common cold. I just believed in the thought process of the common cold. Okay, got it, check, I can let that go now. I don't have to create all this other stuff in my life to realize that I don't, you know, I got it. I can be whole. I can be healthy as a spiritual being, as a human being. I don't have to carry and create all this craziness because of a thought I had at 8 years old. That I had created the common cold from a misunderstanding of somebody's words, whether that's what the person said or not. That's what I got from it. But it was a misunderstanding of my interpretation and perception of the words. All right. We're going to end here. We'll start with the 4 great denials next week.
Okay, I marked it.
Will you be here next week?
I'll be on TV.
Okay.
Ray will be here with you all.
All right.
And you're going to give us our homework.
I am. So,
Which
That's
I already
real
saw
easy.
our homework on the back there.
yeah, we got homework there. Yeah. That's what you got to read. Okay, so let me skip down there. Hold on. Let me go back down here and see if I can pull it back up.
Mostly I wanted to see what chapter we had to read to. 7. It
It
on
says
here
6 and 7.
6 and 7. And then,
Do they match the same
In this
topics?
moment,
Because some of the books are
exercise.
different.
yeah, I was going to give you guys a different exercise, but I'm going to give you this one instead. This is, yeah.
And what is it? Where is it? Oh,
right here in your hand.
So are the 2 chapters the faith and definitions of terms?
Yes.
From your understanding.
So we're going to talk about chemicalization next week.
Okay.
Okay? And faith. All right.
Yes?
I love you. I bless you. And I behold the living, loving Christ in each of you. And namaste.
Namaste.
Happy chiropractor.
Thank you. It's always nice before I go on to
And the moment exercise, where is